Hello, Kevin.
Hey Niall, how are you?
Good, thanks. And hello to everyone who's tuned into this podcast video. I don't want to say episode of anything because we're just doing. So well, let's record, have a conversation about uh, the latest encyclical on AI in an age of AI. Magnifica Humanitas. Got to get the name right. I was caught
Yeah,
between
yeah,
there. Humanitas Magnifica or Magnifica Humanitas? No, Magnifica Humanitas. The grandeur of humanity. Would that be a good
yeah. I
translation?
think magnificent humans.
Magnificent
uh,
humans. Okay.
yeah, yeah. But
Yeah,
yeah, no, it is the grandeur of humanity. Yeah.
grandeur of humanity. And which was launched yesterday in the Vatican by Pope Leo and his people. Uh,
Yes.
he
Yeah.
was
Some
flanked by
friends of the center.
friends. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I think we need to. Yeah, we're going to claim Professor Anna Rowlands as an official friend of JCFJ. Do you think was that friendship influential in her getting picked?
I mean, it probably was a big deal that JCFJ loves her writing so much. They were
Yeah,
like, okay,
and and
yeah.
she did deliver our annual theology lecture 2 3 years ago.
The first one ever, actually.
Yeah,
But no, Anna Rowland's book on Catholic social teaching is the best book that's ever been written on it, and her presentation yesterday was really just superb. So,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It was
yeah,
magisterial for sure. Uh,
yeah.
and so yeah, and then there was also a co-founder of Anthropic. I can't recall his name, but one of the
Christopher Ola, I think maybe is his
owner,
name. Yeah, yeah. But of
Anthropic.
course, there was the Jesuit Michael Cherney as well, who, yeah,
Yeah,
visited the center once upon a time. I
maybe.
suggested to him at that time that they should write an encyclical about how currency can flow across borders, but people can't. You know, basically that the church had
Okay.
an obligation to flesh out its thinking about migrants. And he said in with great diplomacy, that's an interesting idea, which of course is the most polite way to say that is a crappy idea. But he pointed out that the thing has to be true in a way that allows it to still be relevant in 10 years and in 200 years.
Yeah,
So he's obviously very influential in terms of the settling on this particular topic and how this topic is framed.
yeah. So so
So he
so he is I was secretary of the Dicastery for Integral Human Development. I'm gonna
Yes, yeah. So in ordinary terms, let's say that that's
the
like being
Vatican's
the minister
Department
of
for
a
Social
government.
Justice.
Exactly. He's the minister for social justice.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he's a Jesuit whose background is in refugee care and many other things. And he clearly is framing this as an opportunity to try to get people involved in AI, the scientists, the business leaders, the programmers, to the table so that a long-term conversation can be set up, not just a little short kind of uh, press briefing, but
Yeah.
real deep dialogue. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
So dialogue
look,
and
that has to
conversation,
happen.
yeah, it's a really big part of the framing of this encyclical. It's not a case that the Pope has, adjudicated on on AI or large language models, but he's kind of saying, okay, we need to talk about this, and the church has something to say, and let's yeah, and hence, I think the in-person presence of an AI founder there yesterday. It's literally at the table.
Yes, yeah, and I think many people were concerned when they heard that founder of Anthropic was going to be present, because it feels as if these AI companies have co-opted such a vast amount of our politics that if they also get to determine the conversation within the church, I mean, what's left?
Yeah,
But
has the
it was
church
very
pulled out
clear.
already? Might have been people might be wondering.
What Yeah, whatever you might want to make of the particular content of what the gentleman had to say, it was clear that he was very sincere in his participation.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and let's hope that intended dialogue does actually take off,
Yeah,
because we have stumbled into a situation where these technologies have become ubiquitous without any real serious, robust philosophical and ethical consideration. Um, in the public square, at least, I'm
Yeah.
not denying that, like inside their boardrooms, they will be having lots of conversations. But out here, where it matters, we need to have our voices heard.
Yeah. Um, and so let's say without adjudicating on this particular technology, um, Pope Leo did say that very clearly, like this, no technology is neutral. You can't
It's a
just assume
really
that
important point.
by virtue of it being the new technology, we can't just all jump on board and say, yes, this is the new thing, therefore it is good. It requires there's a real rigorous reflection, discussion, discernment about it that's needed, and that's what he's trying to help.
Yeah, and I mean, we've all had that conversation with, in the pub with the person who says X, Y, or Z isn't good or bad. It's neutral, and it depends on the use you put it to.
Mm,
This is a very popular opinion. It doesn't stand up to any kind of scrutiny. And in Magnifica Humanitas, you see over 40,000 words, real close attention to how the terminal into which you're chatting your questions with ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever, Claude, that is the end product of a vast system
mm,
of activities
mm,
that that's not neutral.
mm.
The decision to make things one way and not the other way, the decision to use this technology and not the other technology, the decision to employ these people and not those people, the decision to locate the data center here and not there, all of these questions are like primarily ethical questions. And so, like right out of the gates, the document is significant because of how he sets that, he like closes off the door.
Yeah.
You're in the realm of ethics here.
Yeah,
Y
there's no kind of standalone AI that's just
exactly.
sitting in a room kind of minding its own business. It's always being used, it's always being regulated, it's always being financed, it's always being owned. Like these are heavily ethical and political decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah, so not neutral. And then he offers like a metaphor, of kind of building metaphor. Leo offers this building metaphor, which sort of frames, I would say, a lot of the discussion in the encyclical. Um, so like, and he contrasts the building of the Tower of Babel, which didn't end well. Spoiler alert. And also the rebuilding of the walls of Jerusalem in the prophet Nehemiah. Kevin, could you help us to understand that those two examples and to compare and contrast?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people will be vaguely familiar with the story of Babel. It's one of those stories at the start of Genesis that people are like, well, why was God so put out by like someone trying to build a tower? That sounds like a reasonable thing to do. But of course, the text is much more subtle than people's kind of vague recollection of it. The text is very clear that there were lots of different languages. And then the people who were on the plains of, my memory escapes me now. I want to say Sinahar, but I might be wrong. But anyway, the people who built Babel impose a single language, and then so they wipe out diversity and homogenize the culture, and then they start to build this totem towards technocratic ability, a tower that would reach into the heavens so that they would be like unto gods,
Yeah,
and that's why why God is so distressed by this human activity. It's not because they're showing ambition; it's because they're tyrants
yeah.
who
They
have
they
committed
want to
all kinds
control.
of yeah,
Yeah,
cultural genocide has
yeah,
happened in behind the verses that you've just kind of skim read.
yeah.
So Babel is the attempt to architect ourselves into a divine power, and he contrasts that with the rebuilding of the walls of Nehemiah under Nehemiah,
Mm.
which is a collective activity where men and women, young people and old people, people who have skills and people who don't have skills, everybody bands together. Everybody takes responsibility for what they can do, and a kind of a glorious example of what in Ireland we would have once called mehel occurs, where the walls get rebuilt faster than they would ever be rebuilt had they been a top-down, centralized, architectonic,
It
technocratic project.
it is literally ground up.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and drawing on the resources of what everybody has to offer and their own creativity and their own ideas and skills. So on one side, Tower of Babel is a let's say a paradigm of control,
Yeah.
and it's
Violent control. Yeah.
and homogeneous or homogenizing, whereas rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem is, let's say, a communion of diversity that empowers everyone to participate, have agency, etc. And then this kind of these two paradigms then sort of translate over today, let's say, into on one hand technocratic paradigm, which is very real. You know, the idea that Francis introduced in Laudato Si, where there is this top-down technocratic, you know, that the technology and the industry and the finance just determines from the top down what
Yeah, we
everyone's going to
marshal the
do.
data and the evidence, and
Yeah,
then we come to the right policy and we get that implemented. All this nonsense about talking to people and listening, that just slows things down. Yeah.
right, right. And so that just plows on ahead. So we don't want to see that happen. And then really he's asking, or calling on all people to really join in, let's say, in the building up of our civilization. Because he's not just worried about, you know, technology. He's worried about society and, like, as he says, like the civilization of love.
Yeah.
And he wants us all to be artisans, contributors to this civilization of love.
Yeah. And that like the thing that really struck me reading the document yesterday in the sunshine was how articulate it is about Christian humanism. So really the what is this encyclical about? This is what it's about. What does it mean to flourish as a human being in the age of AI?
Hmm. Hmm.
So this is about the grandeur of human beings and about how do we live fully. Because he says when a human being is fully alive, it's a reflection of God's glory. And he says, you know, AI poses all kinds of difficulties for us to live full lives because there is this potential for AI to become the mega ultra example of top-down rule, which will benefit a very small number and exclude, render unemployed, and ultimately disenfranchise hundreds of millions of people.
I think
Uh,
disenfranchisement is that's a great word, Kevin. That's
uh,
the yeah.
and so we've got to be able to find a way to be human in this age of AI, and that's what the document is about. And so the idea of building the wall again, Irish people will understand. We go through Connemara, we see these beautiful walls that stand for centuries without cement. They're
Mm,
architected in the sense that, you know, each single stone is chosen with care and placed with skill. But it's not like somebody has sat down and drawn it on a blueprint. It's a
yeah,
response to the contingencies of the
yeah.
surface of the stone, and it's a skill that's embodied.
Whereas there's
And
houses
that's
that
what
were
he,
built 50 years ago that are falling down.
right. Or,
Yeah.
I mean, 15 years ago, Niall.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, let's go on a road trip to
Yeah,
Donegal.
yeah, exactly.
So what he's calling when like I know that there's a certain kind of person who will hear the Pope talk about a civilization of love and roll their eyes. But
Mhm.
he's really talking about there bringing love to your craft, to the work you do. He's talking about bringing love to your learning, to how you educate yourself, to how you continue to engage with truth in the world. He's talking about love in terms of the family and the neighbors and, you know, your locality. It really is calling you to be someone who carefully chooses the bricks out of which you're going to build your life,
Right.
as opposed to let some expert somewhere design it for you because that's efficient. And efficiency is a real, through this document, that word efficient is, it doesn't have a positive connotation.
Yeah.
He acts, in fact, at one point says, one of the characteristic things of human beings is that we get to waste time together. I love this church teaching that just is
Yeah.
go hang out, have
Leisure.
nachos. Yeah.
Proper leisure. Yeah, yeah,
So this drive for efficiency is going to leave people behind.
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And what is Christian humanism except the insistence that every single human being is of infinite value to the loving God who has crafted them with great delight.
So that's some of the the large framing and what when you zoom out, that's what's at stake, let's say,
Yeah.
with the advent of AI, and that, let's say, that's how the church sees the terms of the discussion, the terms of the dialogue. This is what's at stake for us. I mean, it's just now that I'm thinking, it is there is a bit of the two. I mean, I think he's resisted being too Augustinian in this encyclical, but that is very much a two cities sort of setup, isn't it? Like classical Augustine setup.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, we should explain that Augustine's great work is The City of God, which is a book written about the decline of Rome,
hmm,
and which he lived through. And he says that there are basically two ways in history to live, which is um, the Roman way, which is driven by the libido dominati, the desire to dominate, and then there's the desire to build a life in this civilization of love sense, and that's the city of God.
mhm,
And these two things are intermingled. Just because somebody has all the right words in terms of Catholic theology doesn't mean they're actually driven by love.
mhm,
And
mhm.
equally, just because a civilization is driven towards domination doesn't mean it's incapable of pursuing justice in some sense. So this is definitely a component in the document. And another Augustinian component is the idea that you become what you love,
Right, right.
and the
That's so good.
practices that
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
the practices that you engage in shape who you are. So, like he talks about how if you're using a large language model for education, the questions and the answers come back so fast. You actually you can't be formed by that process. Education is meant to be
Yeah.
a much more patient task. He
Right.
quotes Plato, interestingly, to support
Yeah.
that. So you become what you love.
Yeah. So let's okay. So we've probably done enough there on framing. Let's get into some of the particular issues, concerns that he has. And so you started there with education. Obviously, AI can like accelerate the, I don't want to say the learning process, but like the information processing process, or people's ability to access information. And he's sort of warning against, Leo is warning against this being considered as true education, because it's not allowing that actual human process of like coming to an insight or being struck by insights and new information, that it's kind of bypassing that. And I
Yes.
suppose the risk is if you don't use it, you lose it. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's
I mean, yeah, yeah.
a genuine risk here of the kind of mass dumbing down of humanity.
I think he chooses de-skilling as his word, but
De-skilling.
let's go back to the Latin because I
That's
bet you we could
much
argue
more
for dumbing
diplomatic than
down.
me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, he does put it up to educators. He says Catholic educators need to wrestle with this. So there is and we are here very heavily committed to the Ignatian way of things. The Jesuits are the biggest educators in the world. This document is going to have to be read carefully in Jesuit schools and Jesuit universities, who may have enthusiastically embraced technology in the classroom
yeah,
and who may now have reason to be a little bit more critical about whether or not that Platonic process of questioning
yeah,
and of being troubled by something
yeah,
and of getting the I've got it moment through insight. Maybe we need to slow things down instead
yeah,
of just speeding up the information processing.
yeah. So okay, education. Working issues, employment issues, not just for people who may lose their jobs, but he also talks about like the this unseen slave labor that goes into mining all the
Yeah.
rare earth minerals that are needed for rare earth metals, I should say, that are needed for data centers, microchips, etc. Yeah, he's very concerned about that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you now, but I actually was alarmed reading these sections because I've always thought this idea of mass unemployment was like it's the kind of thing that clickbaity argument, or like it helps sell books, but it surely isn't going to come to pass.
Mm.
But this document was written by people who are deeply conversant
Yeah.
with realities globally. This is one of the great strengths of the Catholic tradition, that like this is not a bunch of Anglosphere,
Right.
college professors. They're in conversation with people in sweatshops and in boardrooms. And they do seem to be preparing us for mass unemployment. And they also are very clear that and they say that millions of people are involved in the work of preparing the data. And they do suggest that there will be a large number of populations technologically left behind, and that in effect, this is a new colonialism. Like the language in these sections is,
Yeah.
I'm a student of Catholic social teaching.
Yeah.
The documents are tailored to be moderate on the one hand, and then on the other is like the definitive stance of Catholic social teaching. That this document holds that, but when it comes to the on the other hand, the
Right.
warnings are
Yeah.
remarkably stark.
Dark. Yeah.
And so from the mining of rare earth minerals right through to the tagging of the documents that are fed into these machines,
Mm.
the Pope sees the potential to see a massive retrograde step in
Mm.
terms of the working conditions of human beings, not just white collar workers who will be laid off in the Western world, but that
Mm.
there will be a small group of people who win out from this. And then there will be a large number of people who are systematically left behind.
I was struck by him using the term colonialism, and that this is
Hmm.
a form of, an example of colonialism, basically saying this isn't, in the past, the colonizers kind of typically owned people, the bodies of slaves and slave labor. But now the ownership is on our data and our information,
Yes.
and then that's how they exploit us. They exploit us by possibly knowing our behaviors and patterns better than we do ourselves, and that this is colonialism. And
And we also should be clear for people who maybe don't have the time to read the document. Embedded in this section is a remarkable apology. So Pope Leo very clearly names the complicity, the active complicity of the Catholic Church in slave labor,
right,
and absolutely disowns it. So, of course, there
Amen.
have been many statements down through the years that have talked about this in significant ways. Even Francis repudiated, just a few years ago, repudiated what's called the doctrine of discovery. We don't need to get into that, but it was a very important concept in the minds of the people who set up the Atlantic slave trade. But this is an unambiguous repentance.
Yeah,
And that is significant on a very profound ethical and political level, pastoral level. And it's also significant in terms of the level at which this document is pitched magisterially, because he's picking a fight there with popes in the past who said differently,
right.
and he is reinterpreting.
Yeah, and he's saying we're
So
we're we're a learning church.
exactly.
There's
So that
there's a synodal, it's like, I think, does he say like the church has grown in its awareness of the seriousness of these issues
yes.
over the years. So that's a church that's listening and learning.
And I think if we were really to get into it, a lot of Westerners think, oh, it's good when the church kind of loosens up about things. But actually, the exciting parts about this document is the church is tightening up.
Yeah,
The church is really getting very tight on human dignity
yeah,
and is saying you really can't
yeah,
mess with it. And the church is getting really tight on you can't kill people. Um, and you could say, well, these are obvious things to say. Well, actually, no. As this document says, large powerful nations are actually shifting to a situation that say human dignity is negotiable and we actually can kill people and you're not going to stop us. So
yeah,
the Catholic Church is in a situation now where it is positioned as really the only major institution that is pressing these questions at all.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so there's, I mean, the headlines, I think, already that I've seen have picked up on the Pope's use of the term disarming AI,
Yes.
and he gives it like a lot of space to really challenging the normalization of war, the military industrial complex.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's brilliant that he says that, that this isn't just socialist student unions
Yeah,
websites
yeah.
that are now talking about the military. It's the Pope talking about the military industrial military complex. But yeah, and he's saying, like, again, like on the theme of acceleration, AI is accelerating warfare. Warfare can now be war can be waged digitally, with information, and then also you have the whole issue of moral agency, that
Yes. Yeah.
the machines are going to war without our assent, or without us really knowing what they're doing or what they're going to do. So, like, he devotes a lot of time to this issue of war and peace.
Yeah, this is why it's a real mistake to call this, an AI encyclical. As you said from the very beginning, this is the encyclical for the age of AI. So his like, why is the Pope talking about war? Because that's what popes are meant to do. No more war. That's really for the last since the 1960s one of the slogans. And in this conversation, again, what needs to be heard by ordinary Catholics is that Pope Leo, even more explicitly than Francis, has declared just war theory to be in a coma. Um, it's
Mhm,
still the teaching of the church. He says you still, in a strictly limited sense, have a right to self-defense,
mhm,
but
mhm,
all actual existing war is unjust. Primarily because there can't be this distinction between the combatant and the non-combatant. And
mhm.
AI only amplifies this because if you have a killer robot, how does the killer robot know who is a soldier and who isn't a soldier? And when they kill the non-soldier, how do you know who's responsible for that? And again, he wants the chain of moral reasoning to stretch all the way back. He
Yeah.
wants transparency. He wants frameworks. He wants
And there's
international
literally
law.
no way of knowing. Like,
Yeah,
and you're a former computer software engineer yourself, Kevin, and yeah, there's no way of knowing, like, okay, the robot just killed an innocent person. Can we find out why? No, we probably can't. Did it?
yeah. I mean, it is
It's a
the
black
classic
box.
case of, yeah, yeah. I mean, uh, the response that you get when you go and interrogate that could also be a generation of some other epiphenomenon of the
Yeah,
software that's at play. So, like formally speaking, you simply can't know
yeah,
why that outcome has resulted from that set of inputs. And I personally am agnostic about whether we ever can know that.
right.
That's a like
Yeah,
that's an actual mathematical problem.
yeah.
Um,
I
yeah.
share another concern I have about AI. So there are now applications you can download that will strip an AI software or engine of the safeguards and the guardrails that its developers put in.
Yes.
And therefore it will then do anything you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
More
Yeah.
than, so. I suppose that's my concern. Like, if the Pope is saying, okay, this needs to be regulated, it needs to be channeled in good directions, it needs to be all sorts of safeguards in place. What's to stop, other, using AI to take all that away and say, okay, thanks. It's sort of like buying a relatively simple car and then just taking out the engine, putting in, a V8 and, souping it up, and then all of a sudden you have a race car. I'm genuinely concerned about that, there could be, we may end up with a situation where, yeah, we do have, AI being used in pro-human, pro-planet ways. And then there's just a free for all as well in other places.
I think the analogy actually works the other way. When you open up Copilot, you've got a V8 engine
Right.
that they have electronically limited to act like a little
Okay.
three-cylinder thing that was engineered
Okay.
by
Yeah,
by
yeah,
some
yeah,
environmentally conscious
yeah,
team in Germany.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so. So that's the intrinsic problem is that the kind of power that is the computational power that is unleashed here.
Mm.
It's not. It's all linear in one sense. Like I'm wearing a watch which costs 15 euros, and it's got more computing power than what took Neil Armstrong to the moon, right?
Mhm.
So on one level, the computational development is accelerating at the same speed, but these large language models have developed, I think, faster than even the most hopeful experts
Mm.
would have
Mm.
anticipated. And the reality is now we don't actually see a path from where we are now to a safe future.
Mm. Mm.
But we have to go back in history, and that's one of his great recitations through this document. Whatever else the church is a group of people who remember. We remember our mistakes. We remember the past. We remember the wisdom that came before us. And, once upon a time, a bunch of people said we're going to make slavery illegal. And there was no way for them to do that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
but they incrementally
Mhm.
won the arguments. They built the movements. They
Mhm.
got the laws passed. They got the ships on the sea to stop to physically stop the trade, and it did become illegal.
Yeah.
Um, so so I suppose what Pope Leo would say is we should not underestimate the grandeur of the human moral ability.
Right.
And we can create cultural norms, institutional frameworks, legal structures, economic incentives. As he says, it's like building a wall, and we don't know where we're going to find the bricks,
And I'd
but
say,
we can.
and I'd say a starting place for that as well, just for the individual, is practicing restraint, and he
Yeah,
does exhort people to restrain their desire to use AI. Um,
yeah. He says you really should choose. Sometimes he says actively there will be times when you should just say no.
yeah. Um,
Um,
so again, it's not a blanket ban, but from the level of the individual up to governments and then up to transnational corporations, he is asking for restraint.
and he shows us the way that restraint should look, and he does it in a most unusual fashion by quoting Gandalf.
Yeah.
So at the very end, he quotes Gandalf. Let me get the exact passage because I'm not a big enough Tolkien nerd to know this off by heart. It's not our part to master all the tides of the world, but to do what is in us for the succor of those years wherein we are set, uprooting the evil in the fields that we know, so that those who live after may have clean earth to till. So you have the field you know, whatever it is you're doing as a civil servant or as a primary school teacher or as a parent staying at home, you know your field,
Mm.
till it so that there's something good left over to pass on to the next person. And that's his attitude for how to flourish in the age of AI. What and equally then if you're a computer programmer or if you're a government minister, your field might have more significant influence, but everybody has their part to play.
And I think I found another sort of covert hidden reference to Lord of the Rings as well. He says, "We are to be servants of the coming kingdom instead of lords of towers destined for ruin." I mean, if that's
Aha, okay.
if that's not a reference to Orthanc and
Well,
Saruman, I don't know what is. Like he's.
I mean, there's a major political figure famous for towers, uh,
Okay, all right, yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
I'm not going to say any more in case the
Right.
algorithm
Okay.
picks
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
all up
Yeah.
and I
Multi-layered. I
get
like it.
denied an
I like
essay.
it.
Yeah, yeah. So
It's uh,
somebody
it's
else
it's
in the
Russian
world
dolls
is
in
famous
there.
for a
There's
tower. Yeah.
really loaded.
No, I
Um.
mean, we were
Yeah.
worried, Niall, that this document, when it came, it's so needed. We were worried that it would be too soft. And I think, these are hot takes here, instinctive responses. We've only had the document for just over 24 hours. But it seems to me like there's a vast amount in here for Christians and people of goodwill
Yeah.
to really wrestle with.
Yeah.
And the Pope has given us a great gift.
I think it's a modern day compendium of Catholic social thought
Yeah.
and principles. There's like, as I say, like it goes beyond, it goes way beyond AI, or whatever piece of software you're using. It is about the times we live in, and then all the relevant Catholic social teaching principles that ought to be guiding our thinking and action in this time. So yeah, it's certainly not the Pope's final and last word on AI.
No, no, he's really opened up the
Yeah,
conversation for
yeah,
theologians,
yeah,
scientists, policymakers, and ordinary people to really start entering into the conversation.
yeah,
And he's strongly put it up to politicians to start doing their job instead of letting billionaires push them around.
yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Kevin Hargaden, social theologian at Jesuit Centre for Faith and Justice, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. And
Thanks, Niall.
I'll let you go. And thanks to everyone who's tuned in for our initial thoughts. A lot more to be said. We look forward to engaging with you further. Thank you. God bless.